welcome, Sarah.
Thanks, Suzanne. Thanks everybody for joining us today. And we're doing this again next Wednesday afternoon as well at 3. So you can tune back in, use the same link and pre-register, or go to Suzanne's Facebook page and show that you're interested in the event, and it'll give you reminders and things like that. Put it on your calendar for next week too.
So
we might keep doing it. We might keep doing development.
So next week we'll focus a little bit more on what to do if you can't pay your mortgage. And today we're going to talk a little bit more about what to do if you can't pay credit cards and that type of thing. So if we're ready, let's get started.
Yeah, let's go. I think we're going to use a case study, but let me just preface all of this with right now, if you have credit cards that you're paying normally every month, and you're finding that as you do your current budget, paying your credit cards is going to make you short on other things, short on food, short on other regular bills, insurance, mortgage or rent, things like that. Start contacting your credit card companies and asking them for a break. The credit card companies, those accounts are unsecured, meaning, they're not installment accounts like a mortgage or a car. They have a little more flexibility to take a lower payment on a monthly basis right now. And I think in the long run, and they shouldn't be marking you late. You also want to make sure, can I have a break? Can I not pay, or can I pay a tiny amount the next few months? And if I do, can you just mark me not late, so I don't get a late fee, and so I'm not marked late on my credit. So because of COVID, because if you're experiencing financial hardship right now, I think call the credit card companies first and ask for a break. So this whole conversation is going to be based on sort of normal circumstances, someone working who just happens to also have some debt. And then Suzanne can describe this profile we're going to use. And it may or may not fit you guys watching, but just put your own numbers in the same places as this example we're giving.
Right, so we're going to deal today with just your typical average person. We've got Jane, who has about $30,000 in debt. She makes about $25,000 a year, and she rents an apartment. So today's conversation is not going to include anything about mortgages or what to do if you can't pay your mortgage. This is just if you're renting an apartment. And so as you can see, poor Jane is very stressed because her debt exceeds her income and she doesn't know what to do.
So we're going to run through your options. I think there's a slide here where there's a chart of sort of all the different options. And it's funny, people who are in debt, they just feel kind of overwhelmed, but you really have 3 or 4 or 5 options, which is amazing. I don't know if you want to advance the slide.
See.
I think, there we go. All right, there's more information about Jane.
Yeah, so this is just kind of typical. She's got a little bit of money, or a decent amount in her 401k. She's got a car. She's got some jewelry. Like many people, she has virtually nothing in her savings account and a little bit in her checking account. And for this particular example, she's got $35,000 in student loans, some back income taxes from 2015, bunch of medical bills from some kind of situation that happened in the recent past, and $25,000 in credit card debt.
So her debt is actually more than that.
It was more than the first screen.
It's just that some debt is different than other debt. And Suzanne will definitely get into that and why we use those levels of debt in those examples and those tax years and things like that. So Jane has multiple options. Let's go to the next slide to kind of list them out. And then we're going to go through one by one. Okay, so she could pay nothing. That's definitely an option. A lot of people do that with some or all of their accounts. Nothing wrong with that. That's a decision. They may not understand that it's a strategy or decision, but it is one. You can try debt consolidation. You can try a debt settlement program. You can, now FDCPA stands for a law called the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, and that's sort of something that can apply no matter what option you choose here. And then she also has the option of discussing bankruptcy with a bankruptcy attorney.
These are kind of in order of the way people tend to think about their options, just from a gut level. The first thing people tend to do if they get behind is non-payment. Then you go through the gradations, and most people avoid at all costs bankruptcy, but sometimes it can be the best choice. So.
All right, so non-payment is the kind of, so I don't practice in bankruptcy. That's why I'm such good friends with Suzanne, because she does, and she has that approach, and I have another. Now, most of what I do when I talk to people who have a lot of credit card debt or other debt is I try to see, is bankruptcy really the way they should go? Okay. I really am not looking to have people avoid bankruptcy. Nobody likes to talk about bankruptcy. I call it the B word. I usually postpone using the word bankruptcy until deep into a conversation with someone, because I don't want to scare them off from an early point in the conversation. But sometimes people have already stopped paying their bills by the time they come talk to me. Okay, so it doesn't matter. I mean, if you stop paying for whatever reason, it's an old bill, you moved, you didn't get the bill, you forgot, it wasn't intentional, it just hasn't been paid in a while, or there was too many bills and you just had to stop paying all of them. That's what it is. It's just not paying your bills. Okay. The pros are it doesn't cost you anything. It just, you stop paying and now you can keep that money. The cons is that in and of itself, it's not really a resolution. And then just as far as another con is, people think the sky is going to fall. People think, oh my God, I didn't pay my Discover bill this month, or I missed that American Express payment for a couple months, and they think the sky is going to fall. They think all kinds of terrible things are going to happen, but really all that happens is you start getting letters, and you might eventually get sued. That's it. Phone calls, letters, and you might eventually get sued. So those are really the three downsides to non-payment. So let's go to our next slide. So another option is debt consolidation. And for the record, I do not like this option, and I do not like the next option, which is debt settlement. Okay. Debt consolidation is when you owe, like in Jane's case, let's say she owed, let's just keep it to 25,000, right? Let's say she wants to put those credit cards that might have an average interest rate of 25% into one loan. And so maybe she's got 6 cards and she's juggling 6 due dates and 6 minimum payments and things like that. And she's just like, I don't want to have 6 bills. I want one bill. I'm going to borrow from a company and I'm going to consolidate it all. Sometimes those programs are specific for debt consolidation. Sometimes they ask you who you owe and how much, and then they say, okay, we'll give you this, and it'll all be this interest rate, usually lower than your average credit card interest rate. And then so you take your 25,000, where before you had 6 payments, maybe $100 here, $150 here, 75 here, and now you got one payment of $450 or whatever the monthly payment is on that. Okay, so it takes multiple payments down to one payment. But if you hold on, my one of these Zoom boxes is covering. But if you have poor credit, you might not qualify, right? Somebody might not give you that money. It can take years, because now you're taking that debt and you're putting it into sometimes a 5-year or 6-year repayment program. And another, I mean, I could go on and on about the cons because I don't like debt consolidation. But one thing is, before you had multiple smaller account balances that you could pay at different times of the month, right? So let's say 2 or 3 of your accounts were due between the 1st and the 15th of the month. And so that paycheck that you got at the 1st of the month was going to cover those bills. And then you had the rest that were due the 3rd or 4th week of the month. And so your second paycheck of the month was going to cover the minimums on those. So you could spread out when you paid and how much on each one. So when you consolidate into one bill, now you have, let's call it a $450 payment that you have to pay by the 10th. And it's got to come all out of one paycheck. And it can be rough if you just don't have $450 by that one due date. You could default on this loan. Okay, so you're trying to avoid defaulting on multiple accounts, but you borrow enough to get out of all that debt, and now you have a new loan, and you have to make that one big payment at one point. So and now you owe. Now if you're sued, like if you fell behind on your other smaller balances, and I hope, Suzanne, slow me down and stop me if you think I'm getting ahead or getting confusing, but let's say you owed 6 different cards that total 25,000. Those have smaller balances, some of them under the small claims limit. And if you juggled all of those, but you fell behind on a couple, maybe a $1,500 account balance, that's going to take you to small claims. And that's easier to settle than if you have one new loan of $25,000 and you fell behind on that. You're going to need a lot more money to settle that and deal with that one. And it's going to be superior court, not small claims. So I don't like debt consolidation because you're borrowing to get out of debt, and that's never a good strategy. So we can move on to the next slide. I don't know if there are any questions that have come up as I
And just want to mention that if anybody does have any questions, please use the chat feature and we'll be happy to answer them as we go through.
Okay, so debt settlement, similar to debt consolidation. I think a little worse in a lot of ways. So what people are doing in a debt settlement program is you have, let's say you have 6 accounts and they total $25,000. And let's say it's Capital One, Bank of America, Discover, American Express, and Chase, okay, and maybe one other. And you're basically paying the total of the monthly payments that you were paying before, like over all of your accounts yourself, and you're giving that money to another company, a third party, who then doles it out to your cards according to a deal that they make for you. And you're paying this person to pay your bills for you. So first of all, that costs money. You have to pay that company fees. And those fees are usually paid over the first 6 months of the program. Now, so let's say you have to pay the program $450 a month. What they're going to do is they're going to take like $200 a month out of your $450 and put it in their own pocket. And that's only going to leave $250 for your 6 accounts. So you're going to fall short. And what they don't tell you is either they don't pay those bills or they only pay partially or they pay late. And then now it's going to mess up your credit. Now it's going to look like you didn't pay at all. So I don't like that. That's not often explained to people. And again, their fees are pretty deceptive. Like usually these programs, you find them online, they email you a contract, you electronically sign. You don't really get to see all the details. They don't emphasize, of course, the fees that they're charging. And they don't tell you that all they're really doing is taking your money and giving it to your creditors, just like you were before when you paid your bills yourself. And they're not really getting you a deal. Okay, they're really not getting you a deal. Typically, not compared to how much you have to pay the program for the service when you could have just done it yourself. Okay, and they count on you falling behind. They count on you not being able to pay $450 a month at one time over the period of 6 months or a year or the 5 years that it's going to take to pay off all of your creditors. Okay, they count on that. That's why they get their fees up front, as it says on the slide, and they know that you'll hold on for a few months, and so they take as much as they can early, and then they don't really care if you fall behind. They've gotten paid. Okay, and that's going to hurt your credit if you do fall behind. Now your creditors aren't getting paid, and then they might start to sue you. And some of these companies say, we're going to provide you a lawyer if you get sued, and they don't. They really don't. They have nobody local. They're usually not in Connecticut to begin with, and they don't have a local Connecticut attorney who knows how to handle these things if you do get sued. Plus, it's extra fees. It's not included in the. Okay, so you can tell all kinds of problems with debt settlement. All right, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan. Now, Suzanne and I can each talk about this. The Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. This is just something that could happen whether you're behind on your bills, whether you're struggling to pay your bills or not. If you happen to have a debt that's gone into collection, which means you didn't pay a bill and a third party has now obtained that account for purposes of collecting, either they bought it or they're collecting for your creditor, for a doctor, for a credit card company, for an old landlord. It can be a lawyer contacting you and saying, I represent this oil company and you never paid your oil bill when you lived in that house 2 years ago. Like, it can be all kinds of consumer debt. Okay, if it's for personal, financial, personal or household. What's the definition, Suzanne? It's personal household debt essentially, and personal family or household debt. So it's not like if your business owed somebody, the rules don't apply to the collection of that debt. Okay, so if you're getting calls and like repeatedly, like tons and tons of calls by one company collecting a debt, if they're calling your neighbors and telling your neighbors, your neighbor owes a debt and we're trying to reach her and she's not answering the phone. If you get a letter that has inaccurate information about the account in it, if you look at your credit report and the debt collector is reporting inaccurate information about the account, those are all unfair. Okay, it really regulates how the debt collector can communicate about your account with you and with everybody else. If you feel like you're being treated unfairly by a debt collector, you can talk to Suzanne or I, and we can evaluate whether or not you do have a claim under this act. And we can approach the debt collector and say, look, you violated this law. We want you to settle with our client, because there are sort of automatic it's an automatic award of a certain amount. It's not very high, but it's something. And sometimes the company will let you out of your debt. Not always. It's not part of the law. Sometimes you can get that debt paid, and then you usually don't have to pay your attorney, me or Suzanne or someone else, because the debt collector should pay. If we can get them to pay anything to settle, they'll include your attorney's fees in that settlement. One of the cons here, may incur legal fees if unsuccessful. That's not necessarily something I'm too concerned about, but you may still owe the debt. Okay, if you don't have a claim, if it's not successful, you're still going to owe the debt. You're still going to have to deal with it, and but it's worth a try. It's worth a try if you're dealing with a debt collector at all. Give me or Suzanne the details. We can evaluate whether you have a claim, and those are fun. I've got great stories of the things debt collectors have done to people over the years. I'm sure Suzanne has heard stories too. They will say outrageous things. They will do outrageous things, and so that's our idea of fun when the debt collector does something like that. So.
Sir, before we get to the next slide, you've talked a couple times about small claims, and if somebody didn't consolidate, I know you do a lot of work with that, with the small claims, defending people. Mm-hmm. What can somebody expect, and what is small claims all about?
So small claims court in Connecticut is you can sue, someone can sue you. You can sue someone for up to $5,000, and it's a little bit more if you're a landlord and you're looking for, or you're a tenant and you're looking for some damages that might exceed 5,000, but let's call it 5,000. And what you can expect is to receive in the mail, usually some kind of certified letter or delivery confirmation, like priority mail letter, that includes a statement of what you owe. It's a claim, a writ. It's called a writ. And the writ will say, Sarah owed Discover Bank $2,500. She never paid. And so now we're suing her for $2,500. And they have to prove that they know where you live, and they have to give some proof that you had an account with that company, or you had a debt to that company, and that they're the proper company bringing the suit against you. Soon after you receive that letter, that's going to come from the attorney who's suing you. Soon after that, the court will mail you what's called an answer form with a deadline. And so if you get one of those, you need to respond in some way. Now we're lucky here, Suzanne, the courts here have set up clinics. So if you're being sued in small claims, or if you feel like you need to sue someone in small claims, there's some clinics that our courts offer a few times a month to walk in for free, and attorneys will advise you. Of course, you don't get lots of time, but you get some basic information, and starting a small claim against someone or defending a small claim is pretty simple, and there's a lot of information on the court website as well. So that's easy to handle.
So if you were being sued in small claims, what happens if you just play ostrich and ignore it? And what would you do if you were helping somebody? Again, your Discover example of $2,500. What could somebody expect if they did object?
So if you do nothing, the court will basically, they're still going to issue that answer form and that answer deadline. And if you don't beat that deadline, if you don't file your answer or some kind of reply before that deadline, eventually within a week or two, the court will just default you. You'll lose by default because you did nothing. So the company suing you will get a judgment against you. And here in Connecticut, the courts will enter a judgment amount of whatever the other side is seeking. 99.9 times out of 100, if Discover Bank says she owes $2,500, the court's going to award the $2,500. Okay, they don't really look through it very carefully. They just assume that the amount claimed is the proper amount, and the court will order everybody gets the same order of $35 to pay per week. So you have to pay $35 a week, which is why when I said early on in this presentation that people think the sky is going to fall when they don't pay their bills, and really all that's going to happen is you're going to get calls, you're going to get letters, or you're going to get sued. Is the sue, when you get sued and you lose, all you get is ordered to pay $35 per week. Okay, so not that that's small. I mean, that could be unaffordable, or it could be too much for some people, but that's the basic amount. And when people go, oh, $35 a week, that's like $150 a month. Huh, I could do that. That's not going to kill me. They don't repossess my car because I get sued by Discover. No, they don't foreclose on my house because I got sued by Discover. No, just $35 a week. So that's so there, if that makes people feel better. Okay, so if you do nothing, you'll lose your case and you'll get ordered to pay $35 a week. Of course, you you forego the opportunity to defend yourself. If you really have a defense, if they say you owe 2,500 and you go, yeah, but 2 months ago I paid them $1,000 on that 2,500, it should only be 1,500, and you don't defend, you're still going to get that judgment against you for 2,500. So you should do something. You should respond, and you should ask for a court date. I talked to a lot of people who didn't respond to their small claims. I talked to a lot of people who did nothing. And here's when I hear from them: when their wages are starting to get garnished, or when they go to the bank and their bank account is emptied, because those are two of the remedies. If you lose a case here in Connecticut, whether it's small claims or superior court, and even if you are paying sometimes that $35 a week, the company that sued you can actually request permission from the court to go into your bank account or to ask for their money to be paid out of your wages. Okay, so that's when I hear from some people. They call up and they go, I don't know what to do. I can't, there's no money in my account, and I was about to pay my rent, or I was about to buy groceries. And that's when their account has been executed on. So that's why you want to get ahead of it, and you want to know what's going on, and you want to try to control how much you pay on that judgment, because if 35 a week is too much, you can ask the court for a lower payment. Suzanne, you're on mute if you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Somebody is having trouble hearing, but I think
Okay.
it's their computer. So that's a good segue, actually, because when people get those wage executions is usually when they would call me as well for a bankruptcy. That's the thing that's going to make people very upset. Some people get stressed by the fact that they're being sued, but a lot of people will just get kind of immune to that after a while if they're really struggling financially, and then they'll just wait until something more dramatic happens, which is usually a wage garnishment. And although I just want to be clear, the small claims typically enters a $35 a week order that may or may not include interest. So sometimes the $35 doesn't even keep you at the original order. And the Superior Court doesn't necessarily enter $35 a week. And I've seen them where the creditor will ask for 25% of someone's paycheck, which they're expecting you to object to that. They're not expecting to actually get that. But again, if you just play ostrich and don't object, they're going to get it. And it can be a considerable amount of money.
And so when you maybe get sued, when you start to go behind on your bills, that's when to really call Suzanne, because there's no harm in having that conversation. She'll run through who you owe overall, right? Like you might have stopped paying all of your bills and you've only been sued once. Well, don't try to tackle that bill if you've got others, right? Like part of my no pay strategy, right? And again, I encourage people to file bankruptcy more often than not. Like I send more business to attorneys like Suzanne than I keep, because I think it's definitely worth talking to a bankruptcy attorney and maybe just filing and getting rid of all the debt early, because I don't want people paying a few debts here and there when ultimately at the end of the day they're just going to have to file bankruptcy anyways. If you only have so much savings, if you only have so much income, if your income used to be sort of normal middle income and then something happened and now you're living on Social Security or disability or something, that's the time to talk to one of us about what's the best option. Because don't be the good guy. Like don't be that, oh, I want to do the right thing. Really, honestly, American Express can do without your $35 a month, minimum payment, right? Or your Capital One's not going broke because you don't pay your minimum payments every month, but you might go broke. You might not have money for your prescriptions or food, right? Like let's be strategic about this. If you're gonna start paying back some debts, but you really can't afford to, maybe you don't have to, especially because, and we're talking today about a situation where she doesn't own a home, right? We talked about this example of Jane with only so much income and a bunch of debt. And if you don't own a home, the risk of what can happen to you for not paying your bills is so much lower. Or if you don't have income, if you don't have wages, if you just have Social Security or some other kind of protected income, you're not at risk of having to pay. Okay, you're what we call judgment proof. So don't be that person who sacrifices and is a martyr to put money in the CEO of Chase Bank's pocket, right? Like, that's the way I look at it. That guy's fine. Jamie Dimon making his, what, 30 million a year? He'll be fine if you don't pay that minimum payment. Believe me, he won't be crying over it. So
That's so incredibly true. They make their money, and part of the reason you're paying interest of whatever 29%, 25% is to offset those people that can't pay their bills. And I've literally had people come into my office where their heat's turned off, their electricity's turned off, and they're still desperately trying to pay their bills. You can't. You have to take care of yourself first.
can I make a shameless promotion now that we're kind of talking about this?
Sure.
I wrote a book all about this, and it's just the point. Most of the point of my book is, you know, you're a hardworking middle-class person. You are a good person who was raised to work hard and pay your bills. And that's who I've been working with for 15 years, and Suzanne's been practicing longer than me. And in all of that time, I really met nobody who doesn't want to pay their bills. Okay, I know you want to pay your bills. And this is all about like what having debt does to you. The thing it does to your brain when you feel bad about not being able to pay your bills makes you behave in a way that's against your self-interest. And that's great. Like, it's nice of you to want to pay your bills and to, because I know you were raised to work hard and pay your bills, but don't torture yourself. Get, you know, just, this is kind of a fun book to read through because you'll hear about what other people have done, how they've made it through the other side with or without bankruptcy. And it'll give you some perspective and help you make a decision, I think, on how you want to handle any unpaid bills that you can't afford to pay. It's on Amazon. Just look up my name.
I was going to say, that's a really good book. It's on Amazon.
Thank you. Thank you. Shameless promotion. I give away all the proceeds. So.
So another thing that can be considered, particularly with regard to unsecured debt. And unsecured debt is what Jane has primarily. She's got taxes, income taxes, which are very old. We said they were from 2015. People have this erroneous assumption that taxes are not dischargeable in bankruptcy, but that's not true. A lot of times they are. She has credit card debt. She has medical bills. So again, Jane does not have a house, so there's nothing most of her debt is going to be unsecured debt. Chapter 7 is something that no one wants to do, but it sometimes is your best choice. It's quick, it's fairly straightforward, and you can just stop all the collection action, all of the small claims, all the lawsuits, all the phone calls, all the everything pretty quickly by filing. It takes about 100 days from the day you file to the day you're done, and then you're completely debt-free. And I would agree 100% that nobody wants to file bankruptcy, but what bankruptcy does is really prevent your creditors from ever asking you for money again. If you win $1 million, if you win the lottery, if you somehow come into a windfall and you called American Express and you asked them if you could pay them, they will still take your money, even if it's 5 years later. I think Mark Twain's probably the only person that actually did that, but you could if you wanted to. The downside is really limited. I get this question every day. People say, well, what's the downside of filing bankruptcy? You have to pay an attorney. I mean, technically you could do it on your own, but I certainly wouldn't recommend it because bankruptcy law is fairly complicated, and you'll have to pay the court for the filing. But that's about it. When somebody comes to us, we run their credit report, and the software we use calculates what their credit score is likely to be a year post bankruptcy, and it's almost always up. It can be up by as much as 100 points. So people come in here thinking, oh, bankruptcy is going to ruin my credit. But if your credit score is already in the 500s, it can't get a whole lot lower. So it can only go up from there. Some things are not dischargeable in bankruptcy, and that's pretty much child support, student loans, or taxes incurred within the last 2 or 3 years. Another issue is that not everyone is eligible, but generally when people come into me for a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, they are eligible. Eligibility depends primarily on your income. So for somebody like Jane, who's making, I think we said 25, 30,000 a year, she's going to be eligible. We've had people that make in the 6 figures that are also still eligible. It depends in part on the size of your family. And in Connecticut, the cost of living is so high that I would say 90% of the people 95% of the people that come in here that want to file Chapter 7 are actually eligible to file Chapter 7. I know this isn't about foreclosures and mortgages, but one thing that we do want to make sure that people understand is that Chapter 7 will not stop a foreclosure for more than a couple of months. So Chapter 7 would not be appropriate if our Jane owned a house and she was 6 months behind on her mortgage. That would not be a good fit. But for the case study that we're doing today, it's a perfect fit. And yes, if you have any questions, somebody asked about whether or not you'll lose your car. You will not. So if you want to keep your car, you would have to continue to pay that car payment because that is considered a secured debt. However, a lot of people tell me they want to keep their car, but if your car is worth $5,000 and you owe $15,000, it may not be the best choice to keep that car. You might be better off to give it up. And there are plenty of people that will give you car loans after bankruptcy, immediately after bankruptcy. There's also something called redemption, where if you owe $10,000 on a car that's worth $5,000, there's a procedure through the bankruptcy court that the judge can order the bank to take the $5,000 fair market value, and the rest of it gets essentially written off by getting a new loan. Let me see. This is probably for you, Sarah. Somebody's asking a question. If you can make payments, but the interest rates are killing you, which they're killing all of us, how do you renegotiate or lock in a lower interest rate?
Well, I think you have to basically, if you're in that position, you need to step back and look at your bigger picture. Okay. What's your income now? Is it going to only go up, or is it only going to stay the same or go down while your other bills stay the same or go up, right? We understand you want to pay these bills. Everybody wants to. You didn't take out the credit card and start using it with the intention of not repaying it. You just didn't. We know that. So your efforts at repaying are great. They won't really be appreciated or recognized. A lot of people come to me, you've heard this too, Suzanne, well, I've had that account for 20 years. I was never late, but now I need some help. Well, they're not going to give you help. Not help that's really going to help you. So you might want to, if your situation's changed in any way, you really need to reevaluate whether paying back is smart. Like I always say to people, Suzanne, especially when I meet with, say, a woman, I say, it's not in my interest as your neighbor, as your member of your community, for you to become a poor old woman, right? If you were to pay all your bills now, if you were to drain your 401k to pay off your credit cards, you're only going to be poor when you're old, when you're older, when you need the money most, when you're least able to earn more money on your own. So don't take the short view of, oh, if I could just get zero interest now, I'll pay all my bills back. You know what? If you have enough where the interest rate's a problem, maybe you should rethink whether you're bringing in enough money every month to cover your basic expenses. Why are those bills where they are? Why you're still using them? And let's rethink. Let's do a new budget. Let's figure out how to get rid of that stuff with the Chapter 7 and start fresh on a cash basis where you only spend the money that's coming in. Maybe you just need to clear if you were not paying let me ask, how much are you paying in minimum payments every month? Are your minimum payments $150 total, or are they $1,150 total, right? If you weren't paying $1,100 a month in minimums, you'd have $1,100 extra a month to pay for food and gas and your insurance and your rent. Okay, so
put money aside for your own future.
Yes. So sometimes you just have to do it. Yeah, we appreciate that you want to pay your bills, but you tell me, Suzanne, I have never been inside a bankruptcy court. You tell me how much judgment is there, how much interrogation, how much scrutiny.
No, it's not. And you make a good point, because Jane, for example, has a $35,000 401k. I can't tell you how many times people have come to me. They've withdrawn money from their 401k to pay this debt where they got sued, and then they paid another debt where they got sued. But in the end, they lost their 401k and they had to file bankruptcy anyway because it wasn't enough to pay everybody off. And you have to look at the big picture and take care of yourself. Don't touch your 401k ever to pay a creditor. It just doesn't make any sense at all.
Suzanne, I'm answering this question in the chat right now. And it said for Chapter 7 are bonuses that you earn counted as part of your income. Yes, they certainly are, I would say. But the minimums to file are really high in Connecticut, right?
Oh,
They
yeah.
change quite often. Like a single person, what's the single person amount? Then you can still file bankruptcy.
I don't have it memorized, but I think it's closer to 70 or
Yeah.
75,000 because it goes up every year or
Yeah, and
every year.
then 2 people, it's even more, and then 4 people, it's like 100. I mean, you really can earn quite a bit, especially if you have a child in the household. That only increases the amount you're allowed to earn. So really, just have the conversation with Suzanne. Just send her an email and say, "This is my total debt. This is what I earn. Do you think I could qualify?" And then she'll give you a basic idea, and it really might be the way to go. Again, if you don't anticipate incurring additional debt very soon. Okay, I don't want to interrupt your discussion here, Suzanne,
No.
but when people say to me, should I file bankruptcy? I try to assess, this is why I want the person who's asking about if they could just get lower interest rates. Let's look at your whole situation. Why would you file bankruptcy now? Is now the right time? Okay. You might have just lost your job. Okay, if you just lost your job, I would say no, hold off until you don't need your credit anymore. Right? You might need a little credit to get by. And then once you're working again, you might go, okay, phew, now I have enough coming in every month to pay all my basics and my bills, but I just can't afford to pay all the legacy debt, the debt I incurred before I lost my job or while I was out of work, right? Due to a medical situation, you might have medical debt. So don't file until you don't think you're going to have any more debt coming in, right?
Right. You can only file a Chapter 7 every 8 years. So the ideal time to file is when you're just about to start on your way back up again. So, like Sarah said, you just got a job and you're going to have health insurance, because what you don't want to do, and has happened to me once or twice, you file, you're out of work, people panic and they really insist on filing, but then they're out of work. And somebody, for example, once had a heart attack, incurred $100,000 in medical bills. We were able to get that case dismissed, but it was just luck of the draw that it happened when it did, and not 6 months later. So you really want to file when you're on your way back up, not when you might need the little bit of credit you still have available on your credit cards, or not when, you could incur additional debt in the future.
I think another myth is, oh, well, I have 35,000 in my 401k. I don't qualify. I have 35,000 in my 401k. I have 30,000 of credit card debt. I have to use my 401k to pay my credit cards. True or false?
Absolutely false. Your 401k is 100% protected for 99.9% of the people. So and this does touch a little bit upon what you said before. The purpose of bankruptcy is not benevolence on the part of the government. They don't want you to be destitute when you're older and have to support you. They don't want you to be destitute now and have to support you. They also know that from a societal standpoint, your money is better off being used to, well, in normal times, go out to dinner or go buy your kids school shopping, or whatever you're spending in the community, as opposed to sending all of your money to 3 credit cards every month and not having anything left. So that's really the reason for it. You're not helping yourself and you're not helping the community when you're just over your head like that.
I think there's a question in the chat.
That's a good question. Is there a max you can be contributing to your 401k? You can actually pretty much continue contributing whatever you were previously contributing. There are some limits, but it's not anything that would discourage anybody. But what you can't do is never contribute at all, and then all of a sudden the month before you file, increase it to 15%. That might come up and the trustee might not like that.
Another question is, what's the word on the street about what credit card companies are doing by way of relief in this unprecedented time of pandemic-related hardship? I don't know. I have not called, and I haven't had somebody report back to me the result of their conversation with a credit card company. But I think what you need to do is you need to write down everything you need to spend every month, and go back to February. What were you spending in February on what? When's your electric bill? When is it due? When is your car insurance due? When do you typically, how much gas do you spend? Gasoline, and now very few of us are spending much on gasoline. When is your rent due? How much is it? And how much do you spend on food? Go back and make a budget based on, like, say, February or March, and then look forward and go, okay, and I'm making less money now, or no money, so I can't pay it, I've got enough savings to cover my basics, but I just can't pay the minimums on my credit cards anymore. So know how much you have. You know, you might be able to offer them each $10 a month. So call with that. Say, look, I've done my budget and I can give you $10 a month for April, May, and June. Is that okay? And if you're very specific, they're more likely to give you a deal. Write down who you talk to, date and time, the name of the representative, the name of the company you're calling, and what you asked for and what they told you. Document it. When you do that, then later, if they go back on their word, if you say, okay, can I pay $10 a month and can you give me a break and not report me as late or insufficient payment? And make sure you get them to tell you, yes, we have a program where we're not going to do any credit reporting. Because I'd hate to have this glitch, you know, on this whole pandemic thing, ruin your credit. It's not, but you can't just stop paying the bill. So call them up. It might take several tries to get through because everybody's calling. Document who you talk to, make a specific offer, write down everything that you say and what they say, and then stick to that plan. And let us know, you know, it'd be helpful to me and to the clients that I work with if you share your experience with us as you call your various creditors. We'd appreciate that.
But I think documentation is the key because there are some provisions out there that you're not supposed to be reported for being late right now. And there's some protections, but I'm not really seeing that being implemented. I'm seeing people get dinged pretty regularly for late payments, and some letters are going out about, you know, forbearance. Don't forget, a forbearance is just a postponement of what you owe. So it gets back to what we were talking about earlier. You know, generally people that owe more than $10,000 or $15,000 a year, total, are not going to be able to do a debt consolidation. They're not going to really be able to, in the long run, do anything other than either settle the debt or file a bankruptcy, because life happens. And you know, if you're out of work, you're out of work. You're not going to be able to make the payments.
Did you want to spend a couple minutes on Chapter 13 bankruptcy, Suzanne?
Yeah, let me just very quickly. So there are some people that don't qualify for Chapter 7 because either their income is too high or they would otherwise qualify, but the real reason they need to file is because they're behind on their mortgage. So for those people, a Chapter 13 would be the preferred method of filing. And generally in a 13, I would say more often than not, at least with my clients, no money is paid towards unsecured debt, but the law is that it can be anywhere from 0 to 100% depending on what the court believes you can afford. The real benefit to a Chapter 13 is that it will permanently stop a foreclosure as long as you're making your payments, and you can pay your delinquency over 5 years. So if you come in to me and your mortgage is behind $60,000, what would happen in an overly simplified manner would be you would pay $1,000 a month to the court for 5 years, and at 0% interest. And at the end of the 5 years, you're completely current on your mortgage. You would also be making your regular mortgage payments. But there are a lot of people that get behind on their mortgage that are able to catch up because maybe they got behind on their mortgage because they were out of work due to illness or something like that, and now they're back to work. They have a steady income. So Chapter 13 can be an amazing benefit to people, and people tend to be more willing to file Chapter 13s because they feel like they're good people because they're paying back some of their debt. I would never recommend somebody file Chapter 13 if they would otherwise qualify for a Chapter 7, but it is an option. And I have had people that just really feel it's important to them, their own psyche, to pay back all their debt, and they will pay 100%. But again, it's at 0% interest as opposed to 29% interest with the credit card companies. And even if you're only paying your credit card debt, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. You know, in 5 years, you're not going to owe anybody anything. So it can be helpful for credit card and unsecured debt, but generally it's used for delinquent mortgages. I'm sorry, there's another question on
I'm trying to answer too.
Okay.
To that question. Let me just finish this. So the question is very specific. So it's related to how, you know, if this person wants to file and there's 2 kids that he pays child support on, but only 1 child in his custody, can he claim all 3 kids? And I'd say start looking at the income. If this person already makes more than like a household of 2, like about 75,000, we're just estimating. If he already makes that much more, it might help to be able to claim additional children, to be able to increase his income limit. on when he could file Chapter 7. But if the person already makes less than 75,000, then you don't need the kids to increase your income limit to then file Chapter 7. So that's very specific, and feel free to talk to Suzanne.
Yeah, well, an argument could easily be made that if you're paying child support, that should be a deduction. So whether they live with you or they don't live with you, if you've got 3 kids under 18, you've got 3 kids under 18. Some trustees, some courts will look at how many kids you've got listed on your tax return, but I wouldn't worry too much about that. And again, Connecticut limits are so high that probably everyone on this that's listening to this, and probably 95% of the people that walk through my door do qualify for Chapter 7. It's not even a hard number because you can take deductions for charitable donations. There are so many deductions that you can take. Again, keep in mind, the bankruptcy court's not here to make you just, it doesn't want you to leave you with nothing. So it's not just for quote unquote poor people, it's for anybody that can't pay their bills. Good questions, though.
Yeah, I didn't mean to dismiss the question. I just wouldn't be able to answer.
All right, so I don't know if there's any other questions, but those are probably, that's kind of the range of what you can do from non-payment through and including filing bankruptcy. The important thing I hope that we can take away from this is look at the big picture, really look at the big picture, because if you're struggling to pay your debt, what I hate to see is somebody that borrows money from mom to pay off all their credit cards, and then they owe mom money, and they're not going to be able to pay mom back, which gets very uncomfortable. Or they take out a debt consolidation loan, and they still can't make the payments because, like Sarah said earlier, you know, if it's $1,000 payment broken up into 5 payments, that might $1,000 a month. That might actually be easier to do than one payment of $1,000. So always look at the big picture when you're trying to decide what's the best course for you.
And we're happy to help walk you through that. Like you call my office, talk to my admin, you give me some detail, you give her some details, and she usually puts you on my calendar and we talk for like 15, 20 minutes. Then I figure out, I don't charge for that. And then I figure out whether there's something I can do for you or if I just point you in the right direction. So there's no harm in calling and just laying out your facts, and because I'm better and Suzanne's better at getting some perspective on your situation than you, because you might say your agenda is, I want to pay all my bills. I want to be a good person to pay all my bills. And we respect that, but we want to give you legal advice on whether you have to, and if, or when, and how much, and what's the best way to pay your bills.
And I would really encourage you to call Sarah or I. Don't ask your barber, your hairdresser, your next door neighbor, or your second cousin twice removed, because I have people come in every day and tell me what somebody told them about bankruptcy or about how, what to do with their credit card debt, and it's almost always completely wrong. Somebody's asking a question before we go on to the credit scores. Secured debt is not impacted by bankruptcy unless you want it to be. So if you have a house and you want to keep your house, generally speaking, it's not black and white, but generally speaking, your mortgage is not going to be impacted by a bankruptcy filing.
And that goes to that original question where they say, if you're renting or leasing a car, not renting a car, if you're financing or leasing a car, do you have to give up your car? No. As long as you make your payments. Now, it's a different answer for if you're already behind on your mortgage. Will a bankruptcy solve that problem? Yes, but only if you are repaying on a monthly basis and under a plan under the bankruptcy.
Yeah, occasionally I do get people that come in and think that they can file bankruptcy, get rid of their mortgage or get rid of their car loan and keep the car or the house. That does not work. That does not work. But no. If you have a house or a car that's completely underwater and you don't want to keep it, then that's a different story.
Thanks for being here, everybody. Again, next Wednesday, 3 o'clock, and register for that, or hopefully you're on Suzanne's email list or my email list to get a link to that. And give us your feedback in between, and give us some topics you'd like to see us keep doing.
Yeah, so we got to show this picture of poor Jane. Go back one slide, please. This is Jane after she meets with an attorney. She's gotten her information. She knows she has a resolution. She's sleeping well at night. Perfect. Well, thank you very, very much.
Thanks, everyone.
And these are our emails. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Stay well.